Welcome to Essential Libertarianism, selected readings from voluntarist.com. Essential Libertarianism is voluntarism. Let's reclaim the anti-political heritage of this philosophy together. The essays and books we read in this show will bring us closer to the state-free voluntary society that we desire. Let's begin the journey.
What is essential libertarianism? I submit that essential libertarianism, that is, libertarianism taken to its natural conclusion, is voluntarism. There are centuries of tradition of voluntarist thought that point to that being the case. But what is voluntarism? It's a practice of promoting non-political strategies for achieving a free society. Voluntarists reject electoral politics, in theory and in practice, as incompatible with libertarian goals. Voluntarists seek to delegitimize the state through education and advocate withdrawal of the cooperation and tacit consent on which state power ultimately depends. So now that you know what voluntarism is, I want to take a few moments to tell you about this new podcast. While perusing through some libertarian books one day, I came across an older book that I had never heard of before. Neither Bullets Nor Ballots, Essays on Voluntarism with essays by Carl Watner, George H. Smith, and Wendy McElroy. This book was printed in 1983 with 2,000 copies in the first printing, and as far as I can tell, there was never a second printing. The book that I got was in bad shape, but it was inexpensive, so I grabbed it anyway. Now, I've considered myself a libertarian for well over a decade at this point, and I thought I understood voluntarism. I mean, my first podcast was called The Lava Flow, Libertarian, Anarcho-Capitalist, Voluntarist, Agorist. But let me tell you, I didn't understand that philosophy nearly as well as I thought I did. I had no idea, for example, that it traces its history back to the 1500s. I had no idea the breadth of written material there is in that history talking about withdrawing from political consent completely. There was so much information in this book that I just didn't know. Since this book was in such bad shape, I bought another copy, near pristine, to keep in much better shape on my bookshelf. I now own 2 of the 2,000 printed copies, or 0.1% of them, actually. I've been a bit of a political buff since my teenage years, way back when Bill Clinton was first running for president the first time, and my mother was running for city council. I started as a bit of a liberty Republican because of my mother, and I stayed that way for decades. I found Ron Paul in about 1996 or so, and he had a bit of an impact on me, but he was a Republican, and so was I. I found Ayn Rand in the mid-2000s, and that started a huge transformation in my life, taking this Republican former preacher to a libertarian atheist. I joined the Libertarian Party, both national and in Arkansas, because I thought that was the natural thing to do as a libertarian. I served as chair, district rep, and secretary in my time with the LPAR, and I even served a very uneventful term on the National LP Judicial Committee. I worked my tail off to get the Libertarian Party of Arkansas out of the dumps it was in and turned it into one of the strongest parties in the country. I brought that party full ballot access for the first time in Arkansas history. My wife and I put on the largest state LP convention in 2014, a 3-day event with multiple tracks. But what did I actually achieve during this time? Did I bring Arkansans or anybody else more liberty? With the exception of the liberty to vote for more people, not really. We elected a constable or 2, and that's about it. It was a complete and utter failure. And we were still having to pay $30,000 to $50,000 every 2 years to get back on the ballot. So after years of banging my head against the proverbial wall trying to affect political change, I gave up on political strategy. I started my podcast, and my wife and I moved our boys to New Hampshire to be part of the Free State Project, an effort to move 20,000 libertarians to a small geographic area to effect change in order to bring about liberty in our lifetimes. After being in New Hampshire for several months, I was asked to help out a couple of my friends who were trying to rejuvenate the state Libertarian Party. Knowing that I was finished with politics, I decided to help anyway, because, like it or not, I have skills and knowledge in that area. I was elected vice chair of the party, and we did what we sought out to do. We rejuvenated that party. The Libertarian Party of New Hampshire has grown leaps and bounds since we started this rejuvenation, and we've had 3 state representatives jump ship and join the party, 2 from the Republicans and 1 from the Democrats. But I'm still not happy in my role with the Libertarian Party. I have felt for many years now that voting and party politics is nothing more than playing their game and giving it legitimacy. The LP is the laughingstock of politics, and even when it gets everything right, it has very little impact on politics in general. And sadly, after running presidential and vice presidential candidates like drug warrior Bob Barr, conservative Wayne Allen Root, milquetoast libertarian Gary Johnson, and anti-gun Bill Weld, not much has changed, except the LP has become Republican light in the national arena. With a flagship like that, state affiliates have little chance. So after finding this book, Neither Bullets Nor Ballots, it sparked a reawakening in me, a reawakening of anti-political thought, a reawakening of delegitimizing the state through peaceful, educational, non-political means. I mean, when more than 40% of people are already not voting, and thereby casting their vote by default for non-political means, this is going a long way to delegitimizing the state already. Now if we could only get that number to 100%. Actually, I don't even think we would need to get it that high. I think 75% would pretty much do the trick. The book I've mentioned and the website voluntarist.com are chock full of material, going back as far as 1982 with the Voluntarist newsletter. They have archives of all of their newsletters and hundreds of other articles from people like Lysander Spooner, Robert Lefebvre, Henry David Thoreau, H.L. Mencken, John Taylor Gatto, Murray Rothbard, Larkin Rose, and many more. The goal of this podcast is to rejuvenate that spirit of non-political libertarian thought and action by recording the articles and books from voluntarist.com into an easily digestible, mobile format that can be listened to anywhere at any time. I have the permission from the owner of the Voluntarist newsletter and voluntarist.com, Carl Watner, to use this material for this podcast. I may, from time to time, pop in with my own thoughts or articles from other places, but primarily this podcast will be articles directly from voluntarist.com. This podcast will start out with the first audiobook, created of Neither Bullets Nor Ballots, Essays on Voluntarism. This will be broken into 6 episodes, with each episode being a chapter from that book. After that, I plan to tackle some of the other material directly from voluntarist.com, starting with the material in the fundamentals section of the website. I will then go into some other sections from the site, including non-voting, homeschooling, property and taxes, nonviolence, anarchism, taxation as theft, history, etc. I encourage you to go visit the website voluntarist.com. There are mountains of articles there that I will likely never be able to touch with this podcast, although I'm going to give it my best shot. The material at this site is indispensable, but also while you're there, make sure to sign up for the Voluntarist newsletter, a quarterly mailing with articles from various authors. So without further ado, let's begin this journey of finding non-political solutions to help us smash the state. Let's strike the root together.
Thank you for listening to Essential Libertarianism. You can check out the archives of all of our episodes at essentiallibertarianism.com. And you can subscribe to future episodes on any podcatcher, including Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Google Play, and more. This has been a Pax Libertas Productions podcast.